Yes, Assalamualaikum and a very good morning or afternoon, wherever you are. Yes, welcome back to ESC 3018 Waste Management. And finally, we've come to the final class of the semester. Okay? And today we are going to learn about waste generator responsibilities. So all this while, you have learned about the general background, on waste and how it is being generated, who are the actors, and in terms of waste when it has been generated, there is a need to manage it. Okay, and the waste management approach is related to the types and composition of the waste. And we've learned about things like solid waste, wastewater, hazardous waste, industrial waste, agricultural waste, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of waste, types of waste. And all of these types will correspond to a different way it can be managed. And so bear that in mind, okay, when you think about how you want to propose ways to be managed, you have to look at what are its composition. If it's wastewater, then it's going to be treated differently compared to solid waste. And if you compare that to hazardous waste, the scheduled waste, it's going to be different. So please bear that in mind. So in terms of that, waste generator, have a think. Who is the waste generator? And when we think about that, you think about their respective responsibilities. That's what we're going to look at in this lecture. Okay. First things first, the learning outcome. What you all have to achieve at the end of this lecture is that you can understand the collective responsibilities in waste management. That's number one. Number two, you can discuss the involvement of community members. Number two. And number three is to discuss the extended producer responsibility. And what is extended producer? We're going to see what that is. But this is also being called EPR. Okay? Extended producer responsibilities. Okay? Now, in waste management, now you've learned about so many things, right? All this while, and I guess you know already, okay, from maybe you've heard about it, or maybe you've read about it, you've seen this in social media, so on and so forth. But there's a lot of issues when we talk about waste management. Now, for example, people never really think about when us, as a member of the public, okay, sometimes we don't really think about where our waste ends up. We don't think about that. We just use something, we throw it away, and you just forget about it. Okay? But what happens is that waste needs to be managed. And the local authorities, if we're talking about residential areas, so the local authorities, they will need to manage that waste. And what they will do is they will send this garbage to the landfills. I mean, this was the practice for so many years. However, people start to, they start to think. Landfill site, it's not boundless. It's not, unlimited. There's only specific areas of waste, landfill sites. And one of the things is, maybe people would say, oh, why not just open new landfill sites kalau the existing ones are full, right? They might say that. But you have to think about, would you want a landfill site in your backyard? Would you want something like that? A lot of people would not. Well, I say a lot. but maybe everyone would not want a landfill site to be behind your back door, or even like close by, because you know that there will be some issues in terms of smell, the aesthetics, and that is just what you can see. But what you can't is in the landfills, there are problems with leachate. I'm sure you've learned about this, leachate. It is toxic usually. Okay, and you know, landfills, for example, you have that flat area, and you have the garbage there. Okay, and underneath the ground, and there's groundwater. Okay, and all these toxic materials, if they enter the groundwater, and groundwater goes into the water bodies, that's it. And that's a very, very big problem, because as we humans, we also take water, and water intake points are usually in the rivers. Okay, so if this thing is happening, can you imagine what would be the impact and the public health impact? In your presentation assignments and also the infographic, I've asked you to look into the impacts of waste, and you guys have looked at that with regards to your specific topics. But what I want you to also think about is how that situation will relate to things in real life. And there will always be consequences to the public health, to the environment, so on and so forth. And of course, pollution. Pollution, one is just now I talk about the smell. That is one thing. But also, remember methane. Okay, as the things are being are being broken down by the bacteria in the soil, okay, they will also release methane to the air. CO2, yes, of course, but methane is a much, much worse greenhouse gas compared to carbon, CO2. And you have to bear that in mind. So all of this creates a very, very interrelated problems. You have to think about the impacts. You know, just one thing, it's just a landfill. It's just to treat the current solid waste and the solid waste lah, and that is being produced by the public. But there's a lot of impacts. Okay, and this is through landfills, and there's also the situation where there's improper disposal. This is one example, but of course there's also things like chemical dumping, where these very irresponsible parties, they dump the chemical waste into the rivers or in an area on land. Yeah, but it's, you know, the same thing here will happen. Okay, the chemicals, the toxic things will seep through the soil and enters the water bodies. Okay, or there will be rain. Okay, and the water will create leachate then goes into the water bodies. Yeah, so improper disposal is also another issue. Littering, of course. Littering, one of the major source of plastics in the ocean is riverine litter. We call it riverine litter. And riverine litter means that it happens from something like this lah, improper disposal. So when the rain comes, okay, this plastic will find its way into the river. Okay, that's where the river in comes from. Okay, and that rivers will eventually bring all this waste into the sea. Okay, and that's where we see the situation with plastics and microplastics as well in the ocean. Yeah, microplastic is a very big issue. because it's very, very small, it's very tiny, there's no way for you to um, basically remove it from the sea, where now it is found like in abundance. And what happens is that these tiny little things are being consumed by the fishes, okay? And as it goes up the food chain, it eventually comes back to our body. Yeah. So microplastics is a very, very big issue. Anyways, there's a lot of talks about solar power. Yeah. But what will happen after 20 years? And usually the solar panels will last for 20 years. After that, they will need to be replaced. So what will happen to that waste? At the moment, there are very, very limited ways to treat it. Okay, and so are things like batteries. You know, batteries have to be disposed of properly. Okay, because in the batteries, there's a lot of, well, I would just say chemicals, but it's not chemicals, yeah, elements, things like lithium, things like nickel, okay, which are, one, they are expensive, yeah, and that highlights the need for it to be recycled. Secondly, it comes from underneath the earth and it has a very limited quantity. So you cannot mine it, yeah, forever. Yeah. And number three, it cannot just be disposed of like in the landfill. You can't. Okay, because some of these elements are also toxic. So you have to treat it properly. So if you have batteries, guys, here in our complex B, our department, we also have the bin for batteries. And usually you can see similar things in shopping complexes where you will need to, if you have batteries, you have to dispose of it really, really properly. You can't just throw it in the garbage bin. Yeah. And lastly, it's about public awareness lah. So all of this, if there is no awareness, no knowledge about what are the impacts, we're gonna be in trouble. Okay, because you and I, we can make changes, individual changes. Yeah, but can we do that if everyone else doesn't do anything? That's where public awareness is very, very important, because we need to, everyone has to take charge. Everyone has their own responsibilities. Okay, and that's where it comes to this term, this responsibility. Because remember when I talk about learning outcomes just now, who are the waste generators? Who are they? You and I, we are waste generator. We create waste. Industries, they create waste. And businesses, they also create waste. Our government, do they create waste? Yeah, definitely. Okay, so everyone are actually waste generators. And if we want to talk about responsibility, everyone must have that sense of responsibility. Okay, because we are on this earth together. And we need to save the earth together. Right? So, as an example, plastic waste. Now, plastic in 2019? Yes, 2019. There's a lot of talks, there's a lot of news talking about Malaysia as a site for plastic waste. And I think if you guys can look it up as well, the then minister, the environment minister lah, back then, I think YB Obin, if I'm not mistaken. So the centerpiece news was that they were saying, okay, we are sending back containers upon containers of waste. Because what happened back then was that Malaysia becomes everyone, a lot of these countries, such as the US, Japan, the UK, Germany, they send their plastic waste to Malaysia. Okay, hold to that thought and try to think. All these countries, they send their waste to us. Why does this happen? Okay, back then, it was previously China. Okay, China was the major plastic waste importer. So they accept a lot of plastic waste from other countries. Okay, and before you ask me why China would do that and why Malaysia would do that, okay, let me give you a background info. Okay, so you guys know that we are all, I mean, globally, the world are moving into, better waste management systems. We are going into, going to reduce carbon emissions in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, UN SDGs. Okay, and also each country has their own aspiration to reduce their CO2. And waste is one of the very much related to carbon emission. Okay, so a lot of these developed countries, negara-negara maju, they have regulations in their country, in which, you have to treat certain way, you have to do this, do that to their waste before it can be, before the waste can go into landfill. So not like before where everyone just send their waste to the landfill, and not anymore. So this is something, this is a development lah. So in the developed countries, of course, this is happening. So there, in those countries, when they do the economic evaluations, and they're looking in terms of the cost, they were saying, okay, if we do that, if we do the treatment ourselves, it's going to cost a lot more compared to just sending it to other places who would accept them, and they will pay. Okay, they will pay for that waste to be treated. So that was what happened. So back then, China accepted this because they have a lot of facilities to treat the waste. Okay, but in 2019 as well, China stopped doing that, and that's why all these countries now need to find a new place to dump their plastic waste, and Malaysia becomes that. Okay, and that leads to the surge of, suddenly Malaysia has so many plastic waste. It's not ours primarily, and it comes from outside. Yeah, and one of the things is that if the facilities that accepted this plastic waste, it is a proper facility, that is still okay, because they will follow the regulations set by the government, set by DOE. Yeah. However, situation arise where there's a lot of illegal facilities sprouting up. Because they know there's money there. These people are going to send their waste, and they're going to pay for it. Okay? And illegal ones, that is where the problem is, because they don't really treat it. A lot of them just leave it in their whatever, the warehouse or whatever. And that's leachate, it's not treated. They just accepted the money. And this is the problem, right? So in this kind of situation, plastic waste, okay, please, and also, of course, we are talking about plastic waste as a whole, okay, and just now was the situation. So plastic waste, it's going to increase. It's going to be generated, whether we like it or not, because there is demand. Okay, so the industry as a whole will supply. Okay, this is economy. This is economic terms. If there is a demand, there will the supply will increase. Okay. Now, where does the demand comes from? Right? Sorry, the arrow should go here. Yeah. So where does the demand comes from? It comes from us, from the people, normal citizen, because we use a lot of plastic-based materials, whether you know it or not. But at the same time, the larger portion actually comes from businesses. Okay, where things like these three are actually the three largest producers of plastic. Yeah, sorry, the largest. How do I measure? How do I say this? So they are the top three companies that their plastic waste ends up in the ocean. Okay, when people classify that, these three are the ones. So businesses, they have the demand for plastic, because remember, Coke, for example, the bottle is made of plastic. So that's where things become a bit murky. Okay, because then why does they need that? It's because of us again. Okay, the consumers, they want the products. So as long as there's demand for something, the supply will rise up. Okay, and when we talk about the supply of plastic, eventually when the plastic is being used up, it will end up as waste. Okay, so how are we going to manage that in this kind of situation? Okay. What are you going to use? What type of treatment? And what type of management? How are you going to do that? Okay. And if we're talking about things like landfills, and just now I mentioned, you want to open new landfills? Where? Do you want to volunteer your house? Or let's say I have a place nearby, you can open up a new landfill there. Does that happen? No, you have to think about that. If we don't go for things like landfills, if you want to go for something like incinerator, incineration is it's quite a good approach. WTE, waste to energy, okay, where they utilize all this garbage and it is used to generate electricity. Okay, that's what WTE is. But again, the same thing. This one, we actually have the first incinerator, WTE facility, but it never did took off because there's a lot of what is it in English and bantahan lah. So there's a lot of push from various environmental groups saying no, don't do this. Okay, so the facility was built, but eventually they had to close down. Okay, because people are saying that there's this negative connotations with incinerator in that, okay, this one high temperature and maybe it will explode. Okay, one thing. Second thing is there will be a lot of toxic waste. Where will the toxic waste go? Okay, so that's one thing lah. About if we ask about where and who is going to manage it. Are we going to look at here, the normal citizen? So we ourselves, we have to actually reduce our consumption, then reducing the demand, finally reducing the supply, okay, and eventually leading to a less amount of plastic to be treated. That's one way. Okay. Or are we going to go into things like government policy. You have to enforce something before it can move on. So it can be individuals, it can be organizations, can be even up to the whole country. Okay, and if we look at things like that, yeah, and remembering back about responsibilities, everyone, every peer has to take part in this. Voluntarily, we have to do something. Because if we're talking about regulation, that's like you have to do it anyway. But if we're talking about voluntary, we ourselves, we need to change our behavior. Right now, just now I talk about regulations and policies. So again, we can set up regulations that controls things like supply. Okay, maybe we can say that only certain amounts of plastics are allowed, okay, to be produced. That is possible, although would it really work? Something we need to think about. Okay, and at the same time, this management, it must have its own regulations and policies actually for things to actually move. Because here is where policymakers, government agencies, local authorities, they have this responsibility to think about what are the regulations and policies that must be in place. Because sometimes the problem is that even though certain policies have been made, the enforcement might be lacking. And lacking not so much in terms of people not doing their jobs. No, that's not it. So let me give you a situation. Right? There's actually an act already about waste segregation. Okay? However, that act is only applicable to selected states, not throughout Malaysia, only certain states. If I'm not mistaken, it's Act 672. You can look that up. Whether I'm right or not, I will let you guys know later on. But actually, that is about waste segregation lah, at residential areas. So in houses in those states, you should actually segregate your waste already, right? And there will be different days for different types of waste being collected. Okay, so that policy, that regulation is already in place. However, when it comes to enforcement, okay, if you are an enforcer and you go to do enforcement lah, okay, and you find in this kampung, kampung A, 50% people are not segregating. 50% or 70% or 90% are not segregating their waste, right? So if in terms of regulation, what should be done is they will be fined. Yeah, they will be fined. But imagine if you're going into, places where people are very, very poor, for example. And we're talking about socio-economic situation right now. Okay, how are you going to? Okay, you are not segregating your waste. You will be fined 100. Let's imagine for those people, 100 might mean that they can't eat for a month, for example. That is where, things are, in a gray area. Okay, so a lot of enforcement are not, are being lax. It's there, but we don't really enforce it at the moment because of this kind of situation. Yeah. So at the end of the day, we really need to think about responsibility. it is actually a collective responsibility. All classifications of the population, everyone actually has to play their part. I don't know if you guys seen this movie, Avatar, but I just want to highlight the quote in that movie: "The wealth of this world isn't in the ground; it's all around us." So it's this is, if you've seen the movie Avatar, it's about it's very symbolic basically. And at the end of the day, sorry if this is a spoiler if you haven't seen this movie yet, but it symbolizes big corporations or greed, greedy people, utilizing the wealth of the world. Okay, and in that situation, what they did is actually destroying that environment. Yeah, that is actually at the symbolism of this movie, and this is happening. And we're not just talking about greedy people. Okay, sometimes we are talking about the development of a country. As the country is being developed, okay, a lot of thought went into the economics. We need to think about our resources, what we can actually export, okay, how that country can generate more income. Okay? But sometimes we forget about the cost to the environment. Okay, so please bear that in mind. Our world, the earth is only one, and there's only one. What we do now actually defines the situation or the condition of the world, okay, for the next generation. So whatever choices you make now, okay, actually it has repercussions. It has their impacts later on. So you have to think about that really, really hard. Yeah. Now, remember in the beginning I mentioned about public awareness. Okay, and I hope you guys still remember as well in our ESC 3020, those time in the field trip. So I was with the waste group, right? So I've talked about behavior, right? How we can change behavior. And this is very much related to public awareness, okay? Because sometimes behavior can only be changed if there is knowledge about something. Okay, just now if you guys didn't know about batteries, okay, maybe it's just your behavior, the current behavior is just to throw it in the normal garbage bin. Okay, but now you know, so you can actually change your behavior. Okay, now I have to actually dispose of it properly. So you are aware now of the situation, okay, and your behavior will change because of that knowledge. Okay, that is what the theory of behavioral change is all about. Okay, I've talked before about reward and punishment, and the carrot and stick approach. And that's also one more thing. Besides, if we just change it through knowledge, however we offer like reward or we punish it through things like fines, and people will tend to change. Okay, but there's a lot of models discussing this. But what I want to highlight is this one, the AP model, the knowledge, attitude, and practice model. So in this model, sorry, which is this one, okay, it is actually saying that the knowledge, whatever knowledge it is, okay, it will influence the attitude. Okay, and Attitude here meaning that it's how you feel about something lah, and how you would theoretically behave, right? But it all leads to this one, practice. This is the actual behavioral change that will be determined, right? So at the end of the day, what's the most important thing is knowledge here. That's what I mentioned before. Knowledge and awareness, those things are actually something that will help people to change. Okay, and if we're talking about behavior programs, there's a lot of programs that can be done if we want to think, if we want to advocate behavior change. And this is for going from not so good to better behavior lah. If we're talking about things in terms of waste management, we are talking about the behavior of waste lah, not waste, of us lah, waste generators. Okay. So there's actually 3 categories of behavior problems. We have information-based programs. So this is usually just about if you've seen any reports about waste. It's out there, but maybe the public doesn't have access to that. But it is important. These types of programs are important because it's actually relevant data. It's the real life data. Okay, and it's information. You also have things called social interaction programs, where you try to advocate for behavioral change through things like competition and games, things like community-based programs. You are working together with the community, with the public, right? And through things like these games or competition, maybe you have a competition of recycling competition between different villages or different tamans, and who recycle the most will get, like the best village ever, things like that. The golden village, gold standard village, or green badge village, something like that. Yeah, or they will get monetary benefits as well. But that is about social. So you actually interact with the public. Here you don't do interaction, you just do the study and you give information to the public. Whether they will access it or not, that is another thing lah. Okay, but here you directly involve yourself with the people. Another types of behavior programs is education and training programs. Okay, and this is where you guys are here actually, higher education learning. It's one of the example. So we are thinking about, you have this type of course in waste management. And through this course, you learn a lot of things about waste, its impacts, how you want to treat it, who's responsible. So from this course, you are actually learning. You are evolving your knowledge, on these topics. And I hope, sincerely hope, at the end of this, you will have that motivation. Okay, if you see garbage around, you yourself will try to not litter, use the proper waste baskets, waste bins, so on and so forth. Right? So there's a lot of programs actually out there. There's a lot. And I'm sure even in college, maybe you have seen very similar programs actually. Yeah. So now we go into the final bit, which is talking about the extended producer responsibilities, or we know that as EPR. Okay, so EPR is actually a policy. Okay, it's we are trying to move on from the linear model to a more structured model, right? So in a linear model, it's just about, you have the raw material, it's being processed by the manufacturer. Okay, please bear with me with the gambar. So we have the manufacturer is processing the materials, and then it is distributed. So this is like your grocery store or whatsoever, and then it reaches you as a consumer. This is the linear model. Notice that it's very linear, although I do it like that, but it's one way. Okay, and if we're talking about the waste, it means that at the end of the day, the consumer is the one who will throw the waste away. Okay, but EPR is actually a policy. Okay, policy here meaning that it can either be a company policy or it can be the country lah, government who set up the regulation. So in EPR, okay, the waste just now, okay, are actually the manufacturer and the distributor and or lah. Okay, they are the ones who will be responsible to actually manage that waste after the consumer. How does that work? Right. So if you look here, things like this, take back programs, okay, where the retailer ataupun the manufacturer will actually ask you, okay, the consumers to return that let's say the plastic, okay, the container, okay, and you can actually see this being done actually, and I will show you later on, all around you, and now it's everywhere, I guess. And if we're talking about the principles of EPR, just now I've given you an overview, okay, of how it's what it's all about. Okay, now the regulators. So this is at the country level. Okay, they will set the recycling or recovery targets. Okay, and that responsibility to recycle or to recover the waste from the consumers is put onto the producers. Okay, remember now, before when I say all of us are generators, but here it doesn't mean that lah. Here we are actually talking about this one, the manufacturer and the distributor, okay, because they are the producer in terms of the product. Product. We are the waste generator, but these ones are the product producer. Okay, please, it's this thing, it's a different thing. Okay, so this can be done either the companies themselves or they do it through another organization. Okay? And it is typically being financed by the manufacturers, okay? Or by point of sale fees to consumers. Okay, that could also be an example as well. Okay, so what are the examples of EPR that you had ever participated in or that you know of? Actually, there's actually a lot. Okay, so for example, if you've ever been to Starbucks, they actually want to, in the organization level, they know about the requirements, okay, to reduce the waste generation. Okay? So they have this sort of program. If you use your own cup, for example, you can get some discounts. If you use Starbucks tumbler, for example, you will get some other benefits. So these kind of things actually tells the consumer, hey, try to reduce the use of cups, the disposable cups. You know? And this is something, the cost is being bared by the company actually, if you think about it, because let's say if they give you half price, that cost is actually being absorbed by the company. There's also things like here, but this is in the US lah, yogurt cups. They actually, this company, I can't remember what the name of it is, but what they do is that they ask the consumer to send back this yogurt cup, okay, and these yogurt cups will actually be recycled into toothbrush, okay, and the consumer will get this toothbrush. So it's like telling people, okay, once we're done with that, send it back to me, okay, and the consumer will ask, oh, what will I get? Okay, so you will get a toothbrush back. So it's trying to move things along, okay, with people. When they do it, they're looking at the benefit. Okay, just now remember carrot and stick approach. Okay, they look at the benefit. Okay, I will get something out of this. And once it becomes a behavior, you don't really think anymore about the benefit. You just do it. Yeah. There's also here in Germany. I've been to Germany before, and there's this thing with Coke. So what they do is, I've been to this supermarket actually. I've just arrived with my friend, and we were very, very thirsty. We just arrived, and then we went to this grocery shop, and there's actually this one thing. But back then it was not Coke. It was, there's no logo there. I can't remember what it was. Tak ada benda ni. But there's just this lot. And we were like, oh, what's that? Never mind lah. We just need to buy something. But then one lady come, and she brought like 2 bags of things with her. And she went in front of that and she started to put in her bottle. I was like, oh, okay, that's actually for recycling. And in that shop, they actually will get back some cash back. Okay, because they do that, they will get cash back through the shop, through the grocery shop. Sorry. Okay, that is something that is happening all around the world. Okay, and we're starting to see that here as well in Malaysia. And it goes across different industries. And just now it's about food and beverage. Textiles, have you been to H&M? Have you been to Zara? If you've been, then you can see things like this actually. There's one place where they say, oh, just put in your old clothes and we're going to recycle that for you. Yeah, there's even some shops that say, okay, send your old things to us, okay, and you will get some discounts out of our products, for example. Okay. This is all actually part of EPR, because we are trying to get the public, the consumers, to bring back the things, the waste, back to, you know, the producers and back to the manufacturers, back to the distributors, so that they can actually treat that, they can actually manage that waste. Okay, cosmetics. I use Kiehl's, by the way, and Kiehl's actually, Kiehl. So Kiehl's actually, they have this program. You can send back your, once you are finished with your product, you can send the empty containers back to Kiehl's, and you can actually get some points. It's also in Body Shop, it's also in L'Occitane, and I've seen this in so many different shops actually, and people are really moving into this. Right? Electronics. Yeah? with your handphones. I know that a lot of people, some people changes their handphones quite frequently. I personally, I don't. Okay, and I'm very loyal to things like, if you've seen my phone, it's Sony, and I've been with Sony for like, I don't know, 20 years. So with things like that, but I see a lot of different brands. You can actually send back your old devices, and you can actually get some cashback, or you can save for a new phone. Now, that's something that is actually um, in line with EPR initiatives. And if you have a car, okay, you know that the battery, the car battery, are actually recycled. I mean, not the one that you're using your car, please forgive my phrasing. What I mean was that there's a system, okay, in place for car batteries to be recycled very easily. So it doesn't matter where you buy your car battery from, you can always give back that battery once it's used up, okay, to whatever workshop or whatever battery shops, I mean car batteries lah, and you can get some cashback. It's an existing ecosystem. Yeah, in Malaysia. I'm not sure in other countries, but in Malaysia, this is happening, and it has been so for a very long time. Yeah, so it's good because in terms of batteries, like I mentioned before, it actually contains chemicals. It contains very valuable materials actually. And we have to recycle that. I'm not saying that for you to kumpul, to collect your car batteries and keep it with you forever. I'm not saying that. So you have to recycle it, because in terms of the metals, we have very limited number of it in the mines, okay, in the resources, the natural resources. So however you like it or not, we have to recycle that, yeah, to keep that supply of materials is sustainable, right? So as a conclusion, yeah, in terms of waste management, it is a collective responsibility, okay, and the responsibility of all of us actually reflects how the world is going to be in the next 5, 10, 20, 50 years. And us as a member of community, you guys, you and I, we should be the ambassadors for change. Whenever you can, you have to, instill the awareness about waste. We have to start telling our families, okay, our extended families, our friends, say you guys need to do this and that for our environment. Okay, you are here, you are students of the Department of Environment, UPM. Okay, we have to be at the front. We have to be the front runners. Okay, and lastly, through EPR, there's actually the paradigm shift in waste management. And it's something very good. Hopefully, it's going to be sustained throughout the next decades or so. Okay, and eventually people will start to have a different behavior with waste. So that's it from me today. And I guess this closes off our final class for this semester. Okay, just a quick housekeeping note. I noticed that in my group, okay, half have already done the teaching assessment. So the rest of you who still haven't done that, please do that ASAP. I can't remember when is the due date, but it's not only for you, but it's for me as well. If you have any feedbacks, okay, in terms of my teaching style, for example, okay, please let me know, okay, in your teaching assessment. That will help me to improve for the next batches of students. Right, and then final exam for you guys will be on the 12th of July, 2022, 11:30 to 1:30 p.m., 2 hours. Okay, the group presentation report, I will share that with you in a moment. You will have to submit the link through Putra Blast. Yeah. And also the, sorry, not the report here, the infographic, sorry about that. So you have to submit two things then. One is your infographic. Please make sure that it is in PDF form. Okay? And then your group presentation, post it onto YouTube and you send the link in Putra Blast. Okay, and that's it from me. Thank you and good luck for your final exams and happy studying in the study week. Okay, bye.